The emergency beacon cut through the void of space like a scream in the darkness. Ambassador Cathara of the Galactic Council pressed her four-fingered hand against the communication console, her blue scales shimmering with anxiety as the distress signal repeated its automated message. This is Research Station Gamma 7 in the Nexus sector. We are under attack by unknown hostile forces. Requesting immediate assistance. Station population, 437 beings from 12 different species. Time until life support fails, 6 hours, 23 minutes. The message had been broadcasting for 2 hours already. Cathara's elongated head turned toward her aide, a nervous Zephyrian whose crystalline features reflected the red emergency lighting. Have any council fleets responded, she asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. Negative, Ambassador. The Nexus sector is problematic. The nearest council patrol is 4 days away, and Admiral Voss has declined to risk his ships without proper reconnaissance. Cathara's scales darkened with frustration. The Nexus sector had been a point of contention for months. Pirates, raiders, and, worse, prowled those systems. Most civilized species avoided the region entirely, leaving the research station dangerously isolated despite its important work on quantum communications. What about the hegemony forces? They cite territorial disputes and refuse to enter the sector. The Trade Federation? Their nearest ships are 6 days out. Cathara closed her large, amber eyes and felt the weight of helplessness settle on her shoulders. 437 innocent beings were going to die because politics and fear prevented anyone from Ambassador. Her aide's voice carried an odd note. There is one response. From whom? The humans. Cathara's eyes snapped open. Humans were relatively new to the galactic community, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 50 years ago. They were considered primitive by most standards, though they had proven surprisingly adaptable. Their small fleet was hardly impressive compared to the massive dreadnoughts of the older species. The humans, she repeated. What do they propose to do with their handful of ships? Her aide's crystalline fingers danced over the console. They're not offering ships, Ambassador. They're offering personnel. The communication screen flickered to life, revealing a human male with graying hair and hard eyes. His uniform bore no rank insignia that Cathara recognized, and something about his bearing made her instinctively step back. Ambassador Cathara, this is Director Marcus Cole of the Human Special Operations Command. We've received the distress call from Research Station Gamma 7. Cathara found her voice. Director Cole, while we appreciate humanity's concern, this situation requires immediate military intervention. A research station is under attack by unknown hostiles with superior firepower. Cole's expression didn't change. We understand the situation, Ambassador. 437 beings, multiple species, isolated station, hostile forces of unknown strength and capability. Then, you understand why a small rescue operation would be inadvisable. Something that might have been a smile crossed Cole's weathered features. Ambassador, you're thinking like a politician. This isn't a political problem. It's an operational one. I'm not certain I understand. The galaxy's great powers won't risk their fleets because they can't guarantee success without massive losses. They're thinking about preserving expensive hardware and avoiding embarrassing defeats. Cole leaned forward slightly. Humans don't think that way. We think about the mission. Cathara's scales shifted to a confused purple. Director, I mean no disrespect, but your species has been spacefaring for barely half a century. The forces attacking that station could be anything from void predators to rogue AI constructs. What could you possibly, Ambassador? Cole interrupted quietly. Has your species ever heard of the saying, send a thief to catch a thief? No. It means that sometimes the best way to solve a problem is to use someone who thinks like the problem. Cole's eyes seemed to look right through the screen. The reason no one wants to go to the Nexus sector is because it's full of killers. Pirates, raiders, slavers, mercenaries. The worst kind of beings the galaxy has to offer. Cathara nodded slowly. This much was true. So when killers are threatening innocent lives, Cole continued, maybe what you need isn't a fleet of ships with honor codes and rules of engagement. Maybe what you need is killers who are better at killing than they are. The ambassador felt a chill run down her spine despite the warm ship's atmosphere. What exactly are you proposing? 12 hours ago, we intercepted communications suggesting that the attack on your research station is being led by Captain Vex Mordhack of the Blood-Tide Mercenary Company. Mordhack has been operating in the Nexus sector for 3 years. He's responsible for at least 47 attacks on civilian targets. Cole's fingers moved across his console, and images appeared on the screen. Ships burning in space. Stations with hull breaches. Bodies floating in the void. Mordhack's mistake is that 2 of those attacks hit human colonial outposts. We've been hunting him for 18 months. And, you haven't found him? Oh, we found him 6 months ago. We've been watching. Learning. Mapping his entire operation, his supply lines, his safe houses, his crew rotations. Cole's smile was cold as vacuum. The problem with hunting predators, Ambassador, is that sometimes you have to let them hunt a little while you position yourself for the kill. Cathera's amber eyes widened. You've been tracking him for 6 months and, you haven't acted? We've been patient. Mordhack is careful, paranoid. He never stays in one place long, never follows predictable patterns. But, now he's made a mistake. He's trapped himself on that research station, committed to an operation that will take hours to complete. The director leaned back in his chair. We have a team 12 minutes out from Research Station Gamma 7. They're already in position. 12 minutes? Cathera's scales flushed bright orange with shock. How is that possible? The nearest human ships are Ambassador, our ships are exactly where they need to be, when they need to be there. Cole's tone brooked no argument. The question is whether you want us to proceed. Cathera looked at her aide, whose crystalline features had gone completely transparent with fear. The young Zephyrian whispered, Ambassador, we know nothing about human military capabilities. Their files are classified at levels we cannot access. She turned back to the screen. Director Cole, I appreciate your confidence, but I need some assurance that your people can actually accomplish this rescue without making the situation worse. Cole was quiet for a moment. Then, he spoke to someone off-screen. Patch me through to Team Leader Voss. The screen split, and another human appeared. This one was younger, maybe 30 standard years, with short dark hair and scars on his face. Unlike Cole's clean uniform, this human wore some kind of black tactical gear that seemed to absorb light. Voss here, the younger human said simply. Team Leader, you're speaking to Ambassador Cathera of the Galactic Council. She needs to understand our capabilities. Voss nodded once. Ambassador. My team is currently aboard Captain Mordhack's flagship. We've been here for 4 hours. Cathera's scales went pure white. You're, what? We're inside the enemy command ship, Voss explained as casually as if he were discussing the weather. We infiltrated during their last supply run. Mordhack has 17 ships in his fleet, total crew of about 400. They boarded the research station with 60 fighters while keeping the rest in space to prevent escape. The ambassador found herself unable to speak. The good news, Voss continued, is that they haven't started executing hostages yet. They're focused on looting the research data and stripping valuable equipment. The bad news is that Mordhack plans to sell the survivors to Krellian slavers. The exchange is scheduled to happen in 4 hours. How do you know all this? Voss glanced at something off-screen. Because we've been listening to their communications for the past 4 hours. Their security is decent against conventional military infiltration, but they weren't expecting what we brought to the fight. Director Cole spoke up. Ambassador, our species has a saying, the best defense is a good offense. While other civilizations developed bigger guns and stronger shields, we developed better ways to get inside the enemy's defenses. What are you asking for? Cathera managed. Nothing, Cole replied. We're not asking for anything. We're informing you that in approximately 1 hour, Research Station Gamma 7 will be secure and all hostile forces will be neutralized. And the hostages? Team Leader Voss answered. Our mission parameters prioritize civilian preservation above all other considerations. Acceptable losses among the research staff, 0. Cathera stared at the screen. In her 40 years as a diplomatic representative, she had never encountered anything like this. The human spoke about an impossible military operation with the same calm certainty her people used to discuss lunch menus. How many personnel are you deploying? She asked. That's classified, Cole said. Can you at least tell me, Ambassador? Voss interrupted. With respect, the specifics of our operation aren't relevant to your decision. You have 437 beings who will die if someone doesn't act. We're acting. The only question is whether you want us to keep you informed as we proceed. Director Cole nodded. This is a professional courtesy, Ambassador. We're not requesting permission or support. We're offering you real-time updates so the Council isn't completely in the dark. Cathara looked at her aide again. The Zephyrian had managed to regain some color but still looked terrified. In the background, other Council representatives were shouting into communication devices, trying frantically to reach their respective military commands. She turned back to the humans. Proceed, she said quietly. Understood. We'll transmit updates every 15 minutes. Cole's image disappeared from the split screen, leaving only Team Leader Voss. Team Leader, Cathara said hesitantly, may I ask you something? Yes, Ambassador. How old were you when you became a soldier? Voss considered the question. I was never a soldier, Ambassador. I was recruited into special operations at age 16 from a detention facility. Detention facility? Juvenile prison. I was serving time for breaking into secure facilities. His scarred face showed no emotion. Turns out, skills that make you a criminal can make you very useful to the right people. Cathara felt her scales shift through several colors as she processed this information. Your military recruits criminals? Our military recruits people who are very good at specific skill sets, regardless of their background. My team includes former thieves, assassins, hackers, con artists, and soldiers. We don't care what someone used to do. We care what they can do now. That seems dangerous. Ambassador, in about 50 minutes you're going to see exactly how dangerous we can be. The question is whether you want that danger pointed at your enemies or whether you'd prefer to keep wondering what would happen if it was pointed at you. The transmission cut out, leaving Cathara staring at a blank screen. Around her, the council chamber buzzed with frantic activity as representatives tried to understand what they had just witnessed. Her aide approached carefully. Ambassador, should we alert the fleets? Prepare for the possibility that the humans might fail? Cathara was quiet for a long moment, thinking about Team Leader Voss's scarred face and calm voice. Thinking about Director Cole's cold certainty. Thinking about humans who recruited criminals and sent them into impossible situations with the expectation of success. No, she said finally. I don't think they're going to fail. How can you be sure? Cathara turned away from the blank screen, her scales settling into a thoughtful silver. Because I'm beginning to understand why the human military files are classified. And I'm beginning to think that maybe the galaxy doesn't understand humans as well as we thought we did. In the depths of space, Research Station Gamma 7 continued to broadcast its automated distress signal. But, for the first time in hours, Ambassador Cathara felt something that wasn't despair. She felt anticipation. And, somewhere in the darkness between stars, Team Leader Voss and his impossible team were about to show the galaxy why humanity's most lethal answered when others wouldn't even try. Team Leader Nathan Voss moved through the darkened maintenance corridors of Captain Morthack's flagship like a shadow given purpose. The ship's internal sensors couldn't detect him through the adaptive camouflage his team wore, technology that human military research had developed specifically for environments like this. Behind him, Specialist Chen-Lu monitored electronic communications while Rodriguez prepared shape charges on key structural points. At the far end of the ship, Kowalski was systematically disabling escape pods, and Morrison was planting surprises in the ammunition storage areas. Boss, Chen's voice whispered through their encrypted comm system, I'm reading 73 life signs on the research station. 60 are Morthack's people, 13 are hostages being held in the central laboratory. Voss paused at an intersection and consulted the ship schematics they'd downloaded during infiltration. What about the other 324? Locked in their quarters under guard. Morthack's people are going room by room, cataloging who's useful for slave markets and who gets spaced. The team leader's jaw tightened. Intelligence reports had suggested Krellian slavers were expanding their operations, but confirmation still sent cold anger through his system. The Krellian slave trade was one of the galaxy's most profitable and brutal industries, and Captain Morthack had built his reputation by delivering exactly what his clients wanted. Rodriguez, how long until you're ready? Give me 3 more minutes, boss. These ships have redundant structural supports. If I don't place these charges exactly right, we'll blow holes in the wrong bulkheads. Voss checked his chronometer. They had been aboard Morthack's flagship for 4 hours and 17 minutes. In 43 minutes, the captain was scheduled to contact the Krellian buyers and confirm the merchandise transfer. In 43 minutes, 437 innocent beings would begin a journey that would end with them being sold like livestock. Unless Voss and his team stopped it. Chen, patch me through to the station's emergency communication system. You sure, boss? If they detect the transmission, they won't. Use the ghost protocol. Chen's fingers danced across his portable equipment. The ghost protocol was something human intelligence had developed after studying dozens of different alien communication systems. It piggybacked signals on existing transmissions in ways that were invisible to standard detection methods. You're connected, Chen whispered. Voss switched to the research station's emergency frequency. Station personnel, this is Rescue Team Alpha. Do not acknowledge this transmission. In 37 minutes, you will hear explosions. When you do, follow these instructions exactly. He outlined the evacuation plan in calm, precise terms. Emergency exits. Rally points. How to identify his team members. What to do if they encountered Morthack's fighters during the escape. Dr. Sarah Kim, the station's chief administrator, was a 34-year-old xenobiology expert who had spent the last 6 hours trying to keep her staff alive. She sat in her locked office, listening to the human voice give impossibly detailed instructions about things that seemed completely impossible. Rescue Team Alpha? She had monitored all council communications. No rescue was coming. The great fleets of the galaxy had written them off as an acceptable loss. But the human voice continued with the kind of calm precision she associated with her most experienced researchers. These weren't the words of someone making desperate promises. These were operational instructions from someone who expected them to be followed. Dr. Kim, the voice said, and she nearly jumped out of her chair. How did he know her name? You're going to want to move your people away from the central laboratory. In 35 minutes, that area is going to become very dangerous for anyone who isn't wearing military-grade armor. She activated her personal communicator and sent coded messages to her department heads. During the initial attack, she had established emergency protocols. Her people knew how to move through the station without being detected. They had been doing it for hours. Meanwhile, aboard the flagship, Morrison reported in. All escape pods are disabled. If anyone tries to run, they're going to find themselves floating in space without life support. Kowalski? Ammunition storage is ready to go. When this starts, their gun systems are going to experience some very unpleasant surprises. Voss nodded and moved toward the ship's command center. Through his helmet's display, he could see the heat signatures of 17 beings on the bridge. Captain Morthack was there, along with his senior staff. They were completely unaware that 5 humans had been moving through their ship for hours. Rodriguez, status? Charges are set. This ship isn't going anywhere when you give the word. Chen, what's the communication situation? I've isolated their command frequencies. When shooting starts, they won't be able to coordinate with the boarding parties on the station. Voss reached the final checkpoint before the bridge. Through a maintenance hatch, he could see directly into the command center. Captain Morthack was a Vorthan, one of those species that looked like someone had crossed a lizard with a nightmare. He stood nearly 3 meters tall, with scales that shifted color to match his mood. Right now, they were a satisfied golden hue. The captain was speaking to his first officer about the upcoming transaction. The Krellians are particularly interested in the Zephyrian researchers. Apparently, their crystalline biology makes them valuable for certain industrial processes. His first officer, a smaller Vorthan with scarred scales, nodded eagerly. What about the human researchers? Humans are always in demand. Durable, adaptable, and they don't break easily under harsh conditions. The mining cartels love them. Voss felt that familiar cold anger settle in his chest. He had heard conversations like this before, during his years hunting slavers and pirates. The casual way predators discussed their victims never stopped affecting him. Boss, Chen whispered, I'm reading activity on the station. Looks like they're starting to move prisoners toward the docking bay. How many? 37 beings in the first group. Mixed species, all in restraints. Voss checked his chronometer again. 28 minutes until the scheduled contact with the Krellian buyers. Time to begin. All units, initiate Phase 1. Across the pirate fleet, human operatives began their work. On 6 different ships, communication arrays suddenly developed mysterious failures. Power systems experienced inexplicable fluctuations. Navigation computers started reporting false positions. Captain Mordhack noticed the first problems within 90 seconds. What's happening to our sensor array? His bridge crew scrambled to diagnose systems that had been working perfectly moments before. None of them considered the possibility that someone might be aboard their ships, systematically dismantling their capability to fight as a coordinated unit. Sir, we're losing communication with ships 4 through 7. Get engineering teams on it immediately. Sir, engineering is reporting power fluctuations in the primary systems. Mordhack's scales shifted toward an angry red. This is no time for technical difficulties. Contact the boarding teams. I want those prisoners moved to the docking bay ahead of schedule. But, when his communication officer tried to reach the teams on Research Station Gamma 7, he found only static. Sir, I can't raise anyone on the station. Use the backup frequencies. I'm trying, sir. All channels are compromised. Captain Mordhack had spent 15 years building his reputation in the Nexus sector. He had survived ambushes, betrayals, and attacks by military forces from half a dozen species. His survival instincts were finely tuned, and right now they were screaming warnings. Activate full defensive protocols. Bring all weapons online. Scan for enemy ships. Sir, sensors show no enemy vessels within combat range. Then, what is causing the lights went out? Emergency lighting flickered on a moment later, casting the bridge in an ominous red glow. In that dim illumination, Captain Mordhack saw something that made his blood turn cold. A human in black armor had somehow appeared in the center of his bridge. Team leader Voss stood motionless among the pirate crew, his weapon lowered but ready. His armor's adaptive camouflage had rendered him effectively invisible until he chose to be seen. Captain Mordhack, he said conversationally, we need to talk. Mordhack's first officer reached for his sidearm, but found himself looking down the barrel of a human weapon that had materialized in Voss's hand faster than Vorthan reflexes could follow. I wouldn't, Voss suggested politely. How did you get aboard my ship? Mordhack demanded, his scales cycling through colors that indicated confusion and rage. Through the cargo bay during your last supply run. Your security is quite good against conventional infiltration, but you weren't prepared for human methodology. Voss gestured slightly with his weapon. Everyone step away from their consoles. You're alone, Mordhack observed. One human against my entire crew. Actually, I'm not alone. Rodriguez? Every screen on the bridge suddenly displayed the same image, Rodriguez in the ship's engine room, surrounded by enough explosive charges to turn the flagship into debris. Kowalski? Another screen showed Kowalski in the ammunition storage area, standing next to devices that were clearly not part of the ship's original equipment. Morrison? Morrison appeared to be in some kind of life support facility, his hands resting on controls that kept 400 beings breathing. Chen? Chen's image showed him in the communication center, surrounded by equipment that had been thoroughly dismantled. Captain Mordhack stared at the screens, his scales fading to a pale, shocked white. How many of you are there? Enough, Voss replied. Captain, you've made several career decisions that have attracted our attention. 47 attacks on civilian targets. Murder of approximately 2,000 non-combatants. Slave trafficking operations involving over 800 sentient beings. Those were legitimate salvage operations. 2 of those attacks hit human settlements. Mordhack's scales went even paler. Everyone in the Nexus sector had heard rumors about human retaliation operations, though few believed them. Captain, here's how this is going to work. You're going to order your boarding teams to return to their ships immediately. You're going to release all prisoners. You're going to provide medical attention to anyone who has been injured. And then, you're going to surrender your entire fleet. Mordhack's first officer made a sound that might have been laughter. Surrender to one human? You're insane. Voss looked at him with the kind of patience teachers reserved for particularly slow students. You're not surrendering to one human. You're surrendering to the human species. I'm just the representative they sent to collect you. What authority do you have here? Mordhak demanded. This is neutral space. Captain, do you know what a letter of marque is? Mordhak's translator struggled with the human term. No. It's an old human concept. It means my government has given me legal authority to hunt down and capture or kill pirates who prey on human citizens. Voss smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. The interesting thing about a letter of marque is that it doesn't have geographical limitations. The bridge fell silent except for the humming of emergency power systems. You have 30 seconds to start giving orders, Voss continued. After that, my team begins implementing less diplomatic solutions. Captain Mordhak looked around his bridge at his terrified crew, then, at the screens showing human operatives positioned throughout his ship. Finally, he looked back at team leader Voss, who waited with the infinite patience of a predator who had already won. What guarantee do I have that you won't kill us anyway? None, Voss replied honestly. But, I can guarantee what will happen if you don't comply. Every one of your crew members will be dead in the next 10 minutes, your fleet will be debris, and I'll rescue those hostages by stepping over your corpses. Mordhak's scales shifted through several colors before settling on the dull gray of defeat. All units, he said into his communicator, return to ships immediately. Release all prisoners and prepare for surrender. Voss nodded approvingly. Excellent choice, Captain. Rodriguez, begin Phase 2. Dr. Sarah Kim pressed herself against the wall as armed figures moved through the corridor outside her laboratory. For hours, she had listened to Mordhak's raiders cataloging equipment and discussing which researchers would bring the highest prices on slave markets. Now, suddenly, everything had changed. The raiders were running. Not retreating in good order, but actually running in panic toward their ships. Through her laboratory's reinforced windows, she could see flashes of light that looked like weapons fire, but the sounds were wrong. Instead of the heavy discharge of military energy weapons, she heard sharp cracks that reminded her of old chemical projectiles. Her communicator chirped softly. The rescue team's frequency. Dr. Kim, this is Team Leader Voss. Station personnel should begin moving toward designated rally points. Avoid corridors 7 through 12 on decks 2 and 3. My team is currently negotiating with stragglers. She activated the emergency protocol and sent coded messages to her department heads. Within minutes, research staff began emerging from hiding places throughout the station. They moved quietly, efficiently, following paths they had memorized during evacuation drills that had never been meant for combat situations. Dr. Kim led a group of 17 researchers toward Rally Point Alpha, a cargo bay near the station's outer ring. As they moved through the maintenance passages, she could hear fighting in the main corridors. But it wasn't the prolonged battle she expected. Instead, she heard brief, sharp engagements that ended quickly and decisively. How many humans are on this station? Whispered Dr. Fenwick, a Zephyrian crystallographer whose transparent features showed his nervousness. I don't know, Dr. Kim replied honestly. But I'm starting to think it might not matter how many there are. They reached Rally Point Alpha to find it already secured. A human in black armor stood near the entrance, his weapon trained on 3 disarmed raiders who sat with their hands bound behind their backs. The captured pirates looked like they had encountered something they didn't understand and definitely didn't want to meet again. Dr. Kim, the human asked. Yes. Specialist Morrison. Your people need to stay here until we finish securing the station. Should be about 20 more minutes. Dr. Kim looked at the captured raiders. All 3 were species she recognized as dangerous predators. The fact that one human had taken them prisoner without apparent injury was remarkable. Specialist Morrison, how many of you are there? Morrison considered the question while keeping his attention on the prisoners. Enough to do the job, ma'am. Meanwhile, in Research Station Gamma 7's Central Command Center, the real drama was unfolding. Commander Torres, the station's security chief, watched his displays in fascination as unknown contacts moved through his facility with surgical precision. His security sensors could barely track the intruders. They appeared on one camera, vanished from the next, and reappeared 3 corridors away as if they had teleported. When they encountered Mordhak's raiders, the engagements were brief and completely one-sided. Torres was a former military officer who had served with 3 different planetary defense forces. He had seen elite troops in action before. But he had never seen anything like this. The humans didn't fight like soldiers. They fought like artists. They used the station's own environment as a weapon, turning off gravity in specific sections to disorient enemies, redirecting atmospheric systems to create tactical advantages, even using the station's maintenance robots as mobile cover and communication relays. Most impressive was their coordination. Torres counted at least 6 separate human operators, but they moved like parts of a single organism. When one engaged enemies, the others were already positioned to cut off escape routes or provide covering fire. When they needed to bypass security systems, they did so with casual expertise that suggested extensive preparation. "Commander," his deputy said nervously, "should we be doing something?" Torres watched his screens as another group of raiders surrendered to humans who had appeared behind them like ghosts. Like what? Get in their way? On the flagship, Captain Mordhack sat in his command chair under the watchful eye of team leader Voss. Around them, the bridge crew worked frantically to comply with human demands. But compliance was proving more complicated than expected. "Sir," his communication officer reported, "we're having trouble reaching the boarding teams on the station." Voss consulted a device on his wrist. "That's because 60% of your boarding teams have been neutralized. The remainder are attempting to reach their ships, but they're encountering obstacles." "What kind of obstacles?" Mordhack demanded. "The kind that happen when you send pirates to fight against professionals." Voss activated his communicator. "Kowalski, status report. Secured 16 prisoners near Docking Bay 4. Rodriguez has another 12 near the main laboratory. Chen is herding the last group toward the ship bays. Casualties? None on our side. Pirates have various non-fatal injuries, mostly from falls and impacts. Turns out they're not very good at fighting when they can't see what they're shooting at." Mordhack's scales shifted to confused purple. "Your people are taking prisoners?" "When possible," Voss confirmed. "Dead pirates can't provide intelligence about their operations. Live pirates can tell us about supply networks, safe houses, client lists, and other valuable information." "But you said you were going to kill us." "I said I could guarantee what would happen if you didn't surrender." "I never said I preferred that option." Voss smiled grimly. "Captain, humans are very good at violence. But we're even better at getting what we want without using it unnecessarily." The tactical display showed Mordhack's fleet in disarray. Ships were reporting system failures, communication breakdowns, and complete loss of coordination. Several captains were demanding orders, but Mordhack's flagship could barely maintain contact with half the vessels. "How did you do this?" Mordhack asked quietly. "Do what?" "My fleet has 17 ships. Experienced crews. Military-grade weapons and shields. You've paralyzed us with, what? 5 humans?" Voss considered how much to explain. "Captain, your fleet is designed to fight other fleets. Your tactics, training, and equipment are all focused on ship-to-ship combat against opponents who follow conventional strategic doctrines. And we don't follow conventional strategic doctrines. We don't fight ship-to-ship. We fight crew-to-crew." Voss gestured toward the disabled systems around them. "Your shields and weapons are useless when the enemy is already inside your ships." Captain Mordhack stared at the human for a long moment. "How long have you been planning this operation?" 18 months of active planning. "But we've been studying pirate operations in the Nexus sector for 3 years. 3 years? Captain, humans are patient when we need to be. We watched your operations, learned your patterns, identified your weaknesses. We knew eventually you would make a mistake that would give us an opportunity. And the research station was that mistake?" "The research station was bait." Mordhack's scales went completely white. "Bait?" Voss nodded calmly. "We've been monitoring Krellian slave trade communications for months. We knew they were looking for specific types of researchers for their mining operations. We also knew you had contracted to provide them. So we arranged for Research Station Gamma 7 to be conducting exactly the kind of work that would attract your attention." You set this up?" "We encouraged it. The research is real, and the scientists are genuinely doing important work. But we made sure information about their activities reached the right criminal networks. Captain Mordhack felt something he hadn't experienced in years: genuine fear. The entire operation was a trap? The entire operation was an opportunity, Voss corrected. You chose to take it. You chose to attack civilians. You chose to engage in slave trading. We simply provided the circumstances where those choices would have consequences. The communication officer interrupted nervously. Sir, we're receiving surrender transmissions from 6 ships in the fleet. What about the others? The others are not responding to any communications. Voss consulted his wrist device again. That would be because my colleagues have finished securing them. Your colleagues? Mordhack's voice was barely a whisper. Did you think this was the only team, Captain? We have 17 ships in your fleet. We sent 17 teams. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. 17 human teams. 1 for each pirate vessel. All operating simultaneously with perfect coordination across multiple ships and a space station. But, that's impossible, the first officer protested. No military force has that kind of precision capability. No conventional military force, Voss agreed. But, then, we're not exactly conventional. Through the flightship's viewports, they could see other vessels in the pirate fleet. Running lights flickered in patterns that indicated surrender. Emergency beacons activated on ships whose crews had been overwhelmed. The organized pirate fleet that had attacked Research Station Gamma 7 was now a collection of captured vessels awaiting instructions from their new human overseers. What happens now? Mordhack asked. Now we begin the next phase. My people extract intelligence from your computers while yours provide detailed confessions about your operations. Then, we transfer your crews to detention facilities where they'll await trial for piracy, slavery, and murder. And, if we refuse to cooperate? Voss's expression didn't change. Captain, you've been cooperating since the moment I walked onto your bridge. The question is whether you want that cooperation to be voluntary or involuntary. What do you mean? Human intelligence operations have developed some very advanced interrogation techniques. We can extract the information we need whether you choose to provide it or not. Voluntary cooperation just makes the process more pleasant for everyone involved. Mordhack looked around his bridge at his defeated crew, then, back at the human who had dismantled his entire operation in less than an hour. What guarantee do we have of fair treatment? You'll be turned over to Galactic Council authorities for trial under established interstellar law. If convicted, you'll serve your sentences in council detention facilities. If acquitted, you'll be free to go. And if we choose not to trust the council's justice system? Voss was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight that made everyone on the bridge step back involuntarily. Captain, you've spent years preying on innocent beings. You've murdered civilians, destroyed families, and sold sentient creatures into slavery. The only reason you're having this conversation instead of floating in space is because humans believe in justice systems rather than vengeance. He moved closer to Mordhack, and the pirate captain found himself unable to look away from those cold human eyes. But, if you prefer vengeance to justice, that can be arranged. My government gave me very broad authority to resolve this situation in whatever way I deemed appropriate. Captain Mordhack nodded slowly, his scales settling into the gray of complete submission. We'll cooperate. Excellent choice. Voss activated his communicator. All teams, this is Team Leader. Phase 3 is complete. Begin evidence collection and prisoner processing. Throughout the pirate fleet, human operatives began the careful work of documenting crimes and gathering intelligence that would prevent future attacks. Computer systems were downloaded, communication logs were preserved, and financial records were secured. On Research Station Gamma 7, Dr. Sarah Kim stood in her laboratory, watching through the viewports as human shuttles moved between the captured pirate ships like worker insects tending a hive. The immediate danger was over, but she found herself trying to understand what she had witnessed. Her communicator activated. Dr. Kim, this is Team Leader Voss. Yes? Your people are safe. We'll have the station completely secure within the hour. Is there anything your staff needs in terms of medical attention or psychological support? Dr. Kim considered the question. Her people had spent hours expecting to die or worse, but the rescue had been so efficient and complete that many of them were still processing what had happened. Team leader, may I ask you something? Of course. How did you know we would be here? How did you know to position your people for this rescue? There was a pause before Voss answered. Dr. Kim, humans believe that predators hunt in predictable patterns. If you study those patterns long enough, you can be in the right place when they make their next move. But this was so precise. So perfectly coordinated. Dr. Kim, my species has been dealing with predators for a very long time. We've gotten good at it. As the human shuttles continued their work, collecting prisoners and evidence, Dr. Kim found herself thinking about the implications of what she had seen. The galaxy had always assumed that humans were too new, too primitive, too small to be a significant military force. But, as she watched the captured pirate fleet being systematically processed by human teams, she began to understand that the galaxy might have been making a very dangerous assumption. Humanity's most lethal had answered when no one else would. And they had answered with capabilities that no one else possessed. Ambassador Cathera stood in the council chamber, watching the main display with growing amazement. The screen showed 17 captured pirate vessels in perfect formation, their crews in human custody, their weapons disabled, and their computers being systematically examined by teams of human intelligence specialists. The entire operation had taken 57 minutes from start to finish. Around her, representatives from every major galactic power sat in stunned silence. The hegemony's military attaché kept consulting his portable data unit as if the readings might change. The Trade Federation's security advisor had been making urgent communications with their fleet commanders for the past hour. Ambassador, her aide whispered, were receiving detailed reports from the human teams. Complete intelligence packages on the entire pirate network, financial records, communications logs, and what appears to be a comprehensive map of criminal operations throughout the Nexus sector. Cathera's scales shifted to an impressed bronze. How comprehensive? Based on preliminary analysis, the humans have uncovered evidence of illegal activities involving over 200 vessels and approximately 50 different criminal organizations. All from this one operation? It appears that Captain Mordhack's fleet served as a central hub for coordinating pirate activities across multiple sectors. The humans have recovered what amounts to a complete database of organized crime in this region. The main display changed to show Director Cole's face again. Behind him, activity continued as human personnel processed prisoners and evidence. Ambassador Cathera, this is Director Cole. I wanted to provide you with a final operational summary. Please proceed, Director. All 437 research station personnel have been confirmed safe and uninjured. 17 pirate vessels have been secured, with crews totaling 423 individuals in custody. We've recovered evidence documenting criminal activities valued at over 7 billion council credits. Cathera found her voice. Director, these results are extraordinary. How do we properly express the council's gratitude? Ambassador, gratitude isn't necessary. This was a law enforcement operation, not a favor. Law enforcement? Director Cole nodded. 2 years ago, the Galactic Council ratified the Interstellar Criminal Prosecution Treaty. Under that treaty, any signatory species has authority to pursue criminals who commit crimes against their citizens, regardless of where those crimes occur. Cathera's aide quickly accessed the treaty database. Ambassador, he's correct. The treaty was passed during a routine legislative session. Most species signed it without significant review. At the time, Cole continued, most council members assumed it was a symbolic gesture. After all, what could newer species like humans possibly contribute to galactic law enforcement? The ambassador felt a chill of understanding. You've been preparing for this. Ambassador, when humans joined the galactic community, we studied your laws very carefully. We identified opportunities where human capabilities might prove useful for the common good. What kind of capabilities? Cole's expression became thoughtful. Ambassador, most galactic civilizations developed advanced technology as they matured. Faster ships, more powerful weapons, stronger defenses. These are impressive achievements, and they've created a generally peaceful and prosperous galactic community. Yes, they have. But there's a side effect to that success. Most species have lost the ability to deal effectively with those who refuse to follow civilized norms. Cathera considered this statement. It was true that the great powers often struggled against pirates, terrorists, and criminal organizations. Their massive fleets were designed for conventional warfare between civilized nations, not for hunting individual criminals through asteroid fields and dead systems. Human civilization developed differently, Cole explained. We achieved technological advancement while retaining what you might call primitive survival skills. Such as hunting, tracking, the ability to think like predators in order to catch them. Cole leaned forward slightly. Ambassador, most of my people have never seen war between civilized nations. But we're very experienced at dealing with criminals, terrorists, and others who threaten innocent people. Team leader Voss appeared on a split screen from Research Station Gamma 7. Ambassador, we've completed our sweep of the station. Your people performed extremely well under pressure. Dr. Kim and her staff should be commended for their preparation and discipline. Team leader, Cathera said, may I ask about your background? What kind of training produces capabilities like what we've witnessed today? Voss considered the question. Ambassador, I started as a criminal myself. Breaking and entering, mostly. I was good at getting into places I wasn't supposed to be. And your government recruited you from prison? Not exactly. They recruited me from a juvenile rehabilitation program that focused on channeling antisocial behaviors into socially useful directions. Cathera's scale shifted through several colors as she processed this. Your military recruits criminals? Our special operations units recruit people with specific skill sets, regardless of their backgrounds. Former criminals often possess exactly the kind of thinking patterns we need for operations like this one. Director Cole nodded. Ambassador, conventional military thinking focuses on following rules and protocols. Special operations thinking focuses on breaking rules and adapting to unexpected situations. Sometimes the people who are best at that kind of thinking are people who've already spent time on the wrong side of the law. That seems dangerous. It is dangerous, Voss agreed. But it's dangerous to the right people. We take individuals who used to prey on society and give them legitimate ways to use their skills protecting innocent people. How do you ensure they don't revert to criminal behavior? Cole answered. Selection, training, supervision, and purpose. We're very careful about who we recruit. We provide extensive psychological conditioning and ethical training. We maintain strict oversight of all operations. And, most importantly, we give our people a sense of purpose that's more meaningful than personal gain. What kind of purpose? Protecting people who can't protect themselves, Voss said simply. Ambassador, when I was a criminal, I hurt innocent people for personal benefit. Now I hurt bad people to protect innocent ones. The skills are similar, but the purpose is completely different. The main display changed to show Captain Mordhack being escorted aboard a human transport vessel. The pirate captain looked broken, his scales the gray of complete defeat. What will happen to him? Cathera asked. He'll be transferred to council custody for trial under interstellar law, Cole replied. The evidence we've gathered should ensure conviction on multiple charges of piracy, murder, and slave trading. And the intelligence you've recovered? We're preparing complete briefing packages for all council security services. The information we've gathered should allow systematic dismantling of criminal networks throughout the Nexus sector. Ambassador Cathera looked around the council chamber at representatives who were still struggling to understand what they had witnessed. The hegemony's military attaché was speaking urgently into his communicator. The Trade Federation's security advisor looked pale and shaken. Director Cole, she said carefully, what does this mean for future council security operations? That depends on what the council wants it to mean, Ambassador. We can continue operating as we have today, responding to specific threats when they arise. Or the council could consider establishing more formal cooperation protocols. What would that look like? Cole consulted something off-screen. We've prepared a proposal for a joint criminal investigation task force. Human special operations teams would work with council security services to address threats that conventional military forces find challenging. And humans would be willing to participate in such an arrangement? Ambassador, my species believes in justice and the protection of innocent life. If the council wants our help maintaining peace and security, we're prepared to provide it. The chamber fell silent as representatives considered the implications. Humanity had just demonstrated military capabilities that none of them had suspected. More importantly, they had demonstrated a willingness to use those capabilities in support of galactic law and order. Director, Cathera said slowly, I believe the Council would be very interested in discussing such cooperation. Excellent. We'll prepare a formal presentation for your next Security Committee meeting. Team Leader Voss spoke up from the station. Ambassador, there's one more thing. During our intelligence gathering, we discovered that several other criminal organizations are planning similar operations. We have locations, target lists, and operational timelines. How many operations? 17 confirmed attacks planned for the next 6 months. Estimated total casualties if they proceed, over 2,000 civilian deaths and approximately 4,000 people sold into slavery. The chamber erupted in alarmed voices as representatives realized the scope of the criminal threat they had been unaware of. Director Cole waited for quiet before continuing. With the Council's permission, we'd like to prevent those attacks. How? The same way we prevented this one. By being in the right place at the right time with the right capabilities. Cathera looked around the chamber one more time. Every representative was focused on the screens, trying to understand what humanity's involvement might mean for their own species' security. Director Cole, Team Leader Voss, she said formally, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I want to thank you for your actions today. 437 beings are alive because of your intervention. Ambassador, Voss replied, we were just doing our jobs. Perhaps. But, you were doing jobs that no one else was willing or able to do. Cole nodded. Ambassador, that's what humans are good at. Someone needs to be willing to go places others won't go and do things others can't do. If that's what the galaxy needs, we're happy to provide it. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in contemplative silence. After several minutes, Cathera's aide approached with a datapad. Ambassador, we're receiving formal requests from 14 different species asking for emergency consultations about human military capabilities. And the hegemony is requesting immediate discussions about joint training operations. The Trade Federation wants to establish a cooperative security agreement. 3 different species are asking if human teams could investigate suspected criminal activities in their territories. Cathera looked out at the captured pirate fleet, still visible through the chamber's main viewport. 57 minutes. 17 ships. 423 prisoners. 0 civilian casualties. 0 human casualties. Schedule the meetings, she said quietly. I think we need to have some very serious discussions about humanity's role in galactic security. As the council chamber began to empty, Cathera remained at her station, thinking about Team Leader Voss's scarred face and calm voice. Thinking about Director Cole's matter-of-fact descriptions of impossible operations. Thinking about humans who recruited criminals and sent them to protect innocent people. Her aide approached one final time. Ambassador, there's one more communication from the humans. What is it? Director Cole wanted to remind you that they've identified 17 more criminal operations planned for the next 6 months. He's asking if the council would like them to address those situations as well. Cathera's scales shifted to a determined silver. Tell Director Cole that the council is very interested in preventing those attacks. Should I ask about their requirements? Logistical support, authorization, coordination with local security forces? No, Cathera said, thinking about everything she had learned in the past hour. I think humans prefer to work independently. Her aide nodded and moved away to send the message. Cathera remained at the viewport, watching human shuttles move efficiently between the captured pirate vessels. Somewhere out there, Team Leader Voss and his impossible team were finishing their post-operation procedures, probably already planning for the next time they would be needed. The galaxy had always assumed that humans were too new, too primitive, too small to matter in the great game of interstellar politics. But, as Ambassador Cathera watched the systematic dismantling of a criminal network that had terrorized the Nexus sector for years, she understood that the galaxy had been making a fundamental error in its assumptions about humanity. They hadn't been too small to matter. They had been too dangerous to ignore. And, now that they had announced their capabilities by saving 437 innocent lives, the real question wasn't whether humans would become a major force in galactic security. The real question was whether the galaxy's criminals were prepared for what humanity's most lethal could do when they decided to answer the call.